Members of Parliament, support staff, visitors in the public tribune, radio listeners, TV viewers, those viewing via social media, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for your indulgence as we made sure that everything technically was in order for this meeting to take place. I want to welcome you all to the continuation of this Central Committee meeting. This is Central Committee meeting number 22 for the Parliamentary year 2023-2024 for today, Wednesday, September 18th, 2024. At this time, I want to give a special welcome to the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Mr. Luc Mercelina, and his support staff. We have established a quorum of 9 members. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notices of absence from the members La Cruz and Marlin. I have received a notice of lateness from the member Brugge. Are there any other notifications at this time from the floor? There are none. Before I go over to the agenda point for this meeting, of course, it's October the 1st. That is the International Day of the Elderly. However, I want to take this opportunity at the start of this meeting to pay tribute to several elderly persons in our community who, especially last week, I have had the privilege to be in the company of. Last week, I was honored to be in the company of Mrs. Cooks. Everyone knows her from the Bush Road, Mrs. Cooks. And she celebrated her 104th birthday. Saturday last, I was also privileged to be in the company of Mrs. Dorothy Sarant, who celebrated her 98th year on this earth with us. And today, I hope later this afternoon to be in the honored presence of my aunt Beryl Boyrad, who will be celebrating her 100th birthday today. I stand on the shoulders of these women in so many different ways, literally and figuratively. And so, ahead of the International Day celebrating the elderly, I pay tribute to all elderly persons in our community and those celebrating birthdays around this time in particular. To my aunt on the French side of St. Martin, Mrs. Boyrad, happy 100th birthday to you. And so, having thanked you for the opportunity to make that statement, we go over to the agenda point for this meeting, and that is an update on all matters related to GEBE, a request registered on the IS 477 of the Parliamentary year 2023-2024. That request was dated the 7th of March of 2024. As mentioned, it's on March 7 that we received a letter from the members of Parliament Otley, Arundel, and La Cruz with a request for a meeting of the Central Committee of Parliament with the aforementioned agenda point, namely the all matters related to GEBE. And the presence of the Prime Minister was also requested by the members of Parliament. This meeting was convened on August the 30th of this year, during which the requesters of the meeting were given the opportunity to motivate their request, and which was followed by a presentation by the Honorable Prime Minister. After the presentation by the Prime Minister, members of Parliament were given the opportunity to pose questions to the Minister. And the meeting was then adjourned to allow the Minister the time to prepare the answers to the questions posed by members of Parliament. Today, the Prime Minister and his support staff, including the representative of GEBE, have returned to Parliament to provide the answers to the questions posed by members of Parliament. So today, we have the continuation of the Central Committee meeting, and at this time, I would like to give the floor to the Honorable Prime Minister and the Minister of General Affairs to give his opening remarks and answers to the questions posed by members of Parliament during the meeting of August the 30th. At this time, Prime Minister, I invite you to take the floor.
Honorable President of Parliament, Secretary General, Honorable Members of Parliament, the ones in the audience, and the people of St. Martin in general, good morning. Madam Chair, with your permission, I would like to make use of this opportunity to congratulate MP Shamira Roseburg with her birthday. MP Roseburg, congratulations in the name of the Council of Ministers and in the name of course, the URSM family. We want to wish you all the best, wishing you many more years in good company and in good health, and enjoy your day today. We have had the first round with questions that has been posed to the Prime Minister, to myself, concerning the status of GEBE, and I would like to start immediately with giving answers to the questions that I received from the members of Parliament. First of all, I'm going to start with MP Melissa Gums. The first question from her was, NVGB said that they will absorb the costs and will not be passing those to the consumers. Please explain exactly how the costs will not be passed on to the consumer. Indeed, that is what GEBE has promised. I would like to explain how GEBE is going to handle this. NVGB has installed temporary diesel-powered generators units due to damage in several of its heavy fuel power generating engines. Although running these diesel units leads to higher fuel costs, NVGB has decided to cover these expenses internally instead of passing them to the consumers through, for example, the fuel clause. This means that NVGB will manage the costs by optimizing their budget, reallocating funds from other areas, or utilizing their reserves without burdening consumers with the diesel fuel clause rates. Answers to MP Jacobs. Her question was, it is good that the fuel clause calculation was mentioned in the presentation. In previous meetings, it did not come up. There were talks about the percentage of the throughput fee that is paid by the NVGB for the transport of fuel. This was not reflected. In the past, it was mentioned that government can eliminate such a fee to bring down the fuel clause, and it is not clearly defined how much of the market price impact has on the fuel clause. Would like a deeper explanation of the to educate the people the public and the MPs in terms of all the components within the fuel purchases that would further clearly give an answer to the fuel clause and components. I will refer to the fuel clause explanation in the presentation given in Parliament on August the 30th, 2024, and I would like to mention the components that make up the price built-up that Sol charges GEB. These components, as you can see on the screen, are as follows. First of all, before that, just to a reminder, the fuel clause is actually, if you go back to the first one, if you go back, we see that the fuel clause is the F divided by the E to end up in the outcome of the fuel clause. And the F is the total fuel purchases, that is the total cost of the heavy fuel oil and the light fuel oil and the lube oil bought by GEBE to generate the electricity. And the E is the net sale, and that net sale is the amount of electricity available for sale after accounting for the power plant's own consumption, special agreements, and losses. And the E again is dependent on the A minus the B added to the C and the D, and the explanation was given last time about the E, B, and the C. So in general, this is a recapitulation of the formula that was used. Concerning the question about the costs components, that's the next slide, we're going to see that the components that form actually a part of the price is actually the Caribbean posted price. I will come back on an explanation of that. The premium surcharge, the insurance, the freight, the procurement, inspection, loss allowances, the CIF, remittance tax, the port throughput fee, and the marketing differential. These are actually those components that are forming part of the, at the end, the fuel clause. If you want further explanation on the components, I can give you some explanation on that. The Caribbean posted price. The Caribbean posted price posting refers to the publicly available pricing information for fuel products in the Caribbean region. For a company that supplies fuel, it typically involves the regular publication of fuel prices for various products, like, for example, gasoline and diesel, that are consistent across the market. This price can be influenced by factors such as global oil prices, transportation costs, local taxes, and currency exchange rates. The premium surcharge is the second one. The surcharge is a way for suppliers to recoup the higher production and distribution costs associated with premium fuels. The insurance, of course, that is the fuel price insurance or risk coverage related to the transportation and delivery of fuel. The freight is the freight refers to the transportation costs involved in moving fuel from the supplier's facility to the customer's location or a fuel station. The procurement refers to the process and costs associated with sourcing and purchasing the fuel. The inspection refers to the costs associated with ensuring that the fuel meets certain quality, safety, and regulatory standards before it is delivered to the customer. And the loss allowance refers to a contingency for fluid losses that may occur during the storage, handling, and transportation of the fuel. The CIF stands for Costs, Insurance, and Freight, and it is a term commonly used in international trade. The remittance tax refers to a tax imposed on funds that are transferred or sent from one country to another particularly when the funds are sent by individuals or businesses to a foreign entity or jurisdiction. The port throughput fee refers to a charge levied for the handling and movement of goods, such as fuel, through a port. And the marketing differential is the context of fuel pricing that refers to the difference between the cost of producing or acquiring fuel and the price at which it is sold to the end customer. These are a little the explanation of the components that MP Jacobs asked about. A second question was an overview of what the real current costs are and how they fluctuate. Also here, I would like to refer to the fuel clause explanation in the presentation given in Parliament on August the 30th. In addition, I want to reiterate that the oil prices are determined by the fluctuation of prices on the international market. Question 3 of MP Jacobs. When load shedding was highest, the fuel consumption was higher. What other factors impact fuel clause calculation? This statement is difficult to understand. Fuel consumption is based on the production by GEBE and the usage by the consumers. Therefore, it's not possible that during the load shedding, which is a result of less production, the fuel consumption can be higher. Obviously, during the load shedding, no electricity was generated. Question 4. The B in the fuel clause formula calculation is the own consumption of the power plant. How is that price fluctuating based on the engine being down and the choice to use light fuel vs heavy fuel? Is that cost being applied as well over the time? With regards to fluctuations caused by engine downtime, GEBE has indicated that these are reflected in the power plant's own consumption. The provided table on power plant consumption illustrates data for 2023 and 2024, where a 0.2% overall decrease in consumption can be observed. On the screen, you can see the consumption of the power plant for the years 2023 and 2024. Regarding pricing, the power plant's own consumption is calculated based on the fuel clause output figure, which is then multiplied by the plant's consumption. As a result, a 0.2% decrease in consumption translates into a corresponding 0.2% reduction in pricing. In general, the fuel clause is calculated based on the total fuel supplied to the power plant and is determined by the ratio of light fuel oil to heavy fuel oil. Please see the overview, of course, of the power plant's own consumption for 2023 and 2024. This consumption you see behind, for example, 2023 in January, you see that there is a 2.8%, and the 2.8% is the own consumption of the total production of energy by GEBE. Question 5, the fuel clause for the water production of 7 seas. Is there any way that the agreement can be adjusted so that the water company pays for their own fuel consumption? Any adjustments as answer to existing agreements would require a review and a renegotiation between the parties. As mentioned previously, government is looking at all the possibilities to see if and where the elements that make up the fuel clause can be adjusted or lowered. Question 6. How is the fixed rate net loss calculated? Is that something from the regulator, from the Ministry of Fiat? How is that actually regulated? The net loss is calculated by GEBE and is calculated as follows: net produced kilowatt hour minus kilowatt hour sold. 7. What is government doing to alleviate the fuel clause being passed on to the consumer? As mentioned, based on the elements that make up the fuel clause, GEBE and the shareholders are reviewing ways in which this cost can be mitigated for consumers. MP Kotai, his first question was the cost absorption. Some persons did not have electricity, but their bills were doubled. Can I have an explanation on the costs absorption? I want for this to refer to the answer already provided, but would like to repeat that NVGB charges are based on actual consumption. In addition, if a consumer feels their bills does not reflect their usage, we encourage them to visit customer service with their invoice for a true review. On the absorption of the cost, I would like to refer to the explanation already provided with the answer to MP Gums. Question 2 of MP Kotai, what is the remaining lifespan of the current operational generators at GEBE? The current lifespan and planned retirements of GEBE generators are as follows. You can see that in the next table. We don't have it? It's up? Oh, yes, great. This has been presented the last time, and we went through it already. Just for extra information, the black start are the generators, and in this case, generator number 1 and the generator number 13. These are generators that does not contribute to the general national grid. They are being used only if there is any challenges with the plant itself. These are 2 generators that the plant uses for any issues that concerns energy supply to the plant as such. We have the issues, for example, also explained here that was, for example, diesel generator 19, that is the known problem with the crankshaft. And we had, of course, also diesel generator 16, that's the same crankshaft issue. And we know of diesel generator 9, that was a fire damage that liquidated that generator. Question 3, integration of clean energy renewables. Circle back to the grid market discussion. I asked questions a few months ago, but have not received a response. Responses to the Honourable MP questions were provided in Parliament on July the 12th, 2024, with reference made to the attached memo, Elucidation Energy Initiatives. This memo was also included in the responses provided to Parliament on July 12th, 2024. The mentioned memo is also hereby again provided to Parliament via email that was sent to the Secretary General. Referring now to the questions of MP De Wever, the first question, throughout the throughput fee can be negotiated with the supplier. The harbor is getting that cash. Usually the MP stated around the 5 to 6 million US dollars. And the second statement was the airfin reaps the benefits of water consumption, but not taking a lot of the losses of GEBE. Need to look into the renegotiation of the contract. The airfin that the Member of Parliament is referring to is a company owned by 7 Seas. That's just a statement for elucidation. And secondly, of course, referring to these 2 statements, the government will, of course, take these remarks into consideration. Member of Parliament Otley, Sol, 30-year exclusivity contract. What's the plan when it pertains to Sol? Are we looking for different viable options? Are we going to renew due to the fact that we owe Sol? If I'm wrong, please correct me if they do not have exclusivity. According to GEBE, Sol is currently not under an active contract with GEBE. The terms are being reviewed and negotiations are ongoing at this particular moment. Although Sol owns the tank farm and the pipeline infrastructure, giving them a level of exclusivity due to the necessity of this infrastructure, it doesn't necessarily mean that GEBE is committed to a specific arrangement. The discussions are aimed at ensuring the most feasible and cost-effective solution for all parties involved. GEBE informed me that they are willing to explore various options. They may involve reviewing current arrangements, evaluating infrastructure requirements, and considering also other possibilities. Regarding any outstanding debts or obligations to Sol, this is being handled separately. The current negotiations are focused on ensuring a mutually beneficial agreement going forward without directly impacting long-term decisions related to the exclusivity. The second question of MP Otley, the cost will not be passed on to the public. It is strange because the budget needs to be neutral. What goes out needs to come in. What is the plan then? Are we going to crack down on collections to ensure money is coming in? I want to repeat actually that NVGB has stated that they are committed to absorbing the additional costs. This decision ensures that consumers are not burdened with extra charges during a challenging period. GEBE is actively managing its finance to fulfill this commitment. The strategy includes prioritizing financial caution, optimizing resource usage, and potentially enhancing operational efficiencies to counterbalance these costs. Additionally, GEBE is constantly monitoring its revenue stream. While specific measures haven't been outlined yet, ensuring timely collection always remains a top priority for the financial sustainability. In conclusion, to maintain the delivery of essential services and ensure continued financial stability, it's important that consumers also meet their financial obligations by paying their bills and doing this on time. Question 3, generators that are going to be fixed. What is the lifespan of those generators, specifically the ones that we are fixing? What's the plan of GEBE references to the main generators? Does GEBE have money to purchase new generators beside the containerized generators? The answer is in regards to the lifespan of the generators. I refer once again to the overview of NVGEBE generators. Coincidentally, it's still on the screen. The last column is actually the lifespan of the generators. The process, pardon? Yes, I get here information that is stating that generator 7 is back online at this particular moment. The process of purchasing generator involves multiple steps with significant considerations for both design and financing. Concerning the design and layout agreement, the first step is for GEBE and the supplier to agree on the design and layout during the engineering, procurement, and construction process, the known APC. This phase is typically lengthy as it involves detailed planning, design considerations, and technical specifications to ensure that the generators meet the operational needs and site requirements of GEBE. Financing the investment. Given that purchasing generators is a substantial investment, GEBE needs to secure appropriate financing. This could involve arranging loans, seeking funding from investors or other financing options rather than using existing cash flow. Government is currently in conversation with the Netherlands in regards to the financing of the new generators. By following these steps, GEBE can ensure a structured approach to purchasing generators, balancing design requirements with financial planning and legal safeguards. Question 4. We would like to hear more elaborate plan that GEBE has, a realistic vision concerning the financial constraints. Considering the situation we have been in for the last months, and as a result of all the meetings with GEBE, it is agreed that GEBE will present government with a multi-annual plan that will focus on addressing possible financial constraints while implementing necessary upgrades and improvements to ensure long-term sustainability. This includes investments in new generator capacity and renewables as outlined in a least cost power development plan known as the LCPDP, which GEBE is reviewing. It is agreed that the plan needs to include 1, the investment in new generator capacity due to aging infrastructure and the need for more reliable energy. 2, as such, GEBE will prioritize installing additional diesel generators and gradually phase in renewable energy such as solar, photovoltaic system, and wind energy, of course. 3, moving towards renewable energy integrated with a focus on sustainability and cost efficiency that will be an integral part of GEBE goals. The 4th, obviously, GEBE must ensure that the grid can handle future energy demands and withstand hurricanes. GEBE will also strive for economic efficiency and cost reduction to manage operational costs by adopting more cost-effective energy production methods while working within its financial limitations. The request is also for GEBE to work towards developing a long-term capital investment financing framework to support the investments. Question 5. GEBE had some financial constraints and was not where they needed to be. Seeing as we can purchase the containerized generators without passing the cost to the public, I would like to know from an analysis over the past years if GEBE's financials have increased. The answer is GEBE has faced financial challenges in recent years. GEBE is making progress to enhance its financial standing, but there is, of course, still work to be done. Question 6. Also with additional expenses, I would like to know GEBE's ability to pay workers bonuses that are customary, like Christmas is right around the corner, and COLAs. Does GEBE foresee any issues with bonuses and COLAs and the paying of management and workers? The answer is GEBE has indicated that currently there are no expected issues with paying bonuses or COLAs or regular wages for both management and workers. MP Jacobs bills fixed amount of 25 cents, then the added amount of 38 to 42 cents per kilowatt hour. How does this work in the formula presented? Why is the 25 cents separated in the fuel clause? What is the 25 cent calculated from? The GEBE billing structure is composed of several components to cover the cost of electricity consumption and the company's operational and investment expenses. I will give you a breakdown of the components. The 25 cent the MP is referring to is a fixed charge applied to every bill as a stamp duty. Then we have a fixed rate for the first 100 kilowatt per hour of electricity consumed. This, the 29 cents per kilowatture. This rate applies to all customers for their initial consumption up to the 100 kilowatt hour. 3, for any electricity consumption above the 100 kilowatt per hour, GEBE maintains a so-called base rate. This base rate is 25 cents per kilowatt hour. This rate helps cover the company's operational and investment expenses, ensuring GEBE can maintain and expand its infrastructure and services. Then we have the fuel clause rate. This is a variable charge applied monthly based on the total electricity consumption. The fuel clause rate reflects changes in the cost of fuel, which can fluctuate due to the market conditions, of course. The rate is adjusted each month to the account for these variations and is applied to the total consumption. The combination of the above-mentioned charges ensures that GEBE can recover costs associated with fuel price fluctuations, maintain its operations, and invest in necessary infrastructure and development projects. Question 2. Is it so that this is an NVGB presentation or a government presentation? I heard we. Is it we government or we NVGB that is making the statements within the document, the presentation? How involved is government at this time in decision-making at GEBE? Is the Prime Minister only conveying information relayed by the GBE? In the capacity of shareholder representative, the request was made to GEBE to prepare a presentation to be given to Parliament. Of course, as Prime Minister, I had my input in what has been presented before I came to the floor of Parliament. So we is the shareholder and NVGB. On the question how involved is government in the decision-making, I'm sure the MP refers to the shareholders and not government. I can assure the MP that the involvement of the shareholder is in accordance with the Articles of Incorporation. Question 3, can the Prime Minister explain the differences between government's roadmap towards transition for renewable energy prepared by the grid market vis-à-vis the recently conducted strategic business plan by Energynautics with the funding through the trust fund set aside from NVGEBE? What is the difference between the two documents and do they, if at all, relate to each other? The government's roadmap for renewable energy developed by Grid Market serves as a general guide for transitioning to renewables. The strategic business plan for which Energynautics was contracted, funded through the Trust Fund for NVGB, is grounded in a thorough econometric analysis and detailed projection. In a sense, the Grid Market Roadmap provides a high-level vision for the energy transition, while the strategic business plan delivers a comprehensive, actionable strategy based on detailed analysis and modeling for GEBE's energy future. MP Irion, explain why the triple fees exist, how they came to play, and really break it down for the public. It is not understood what is meant with triple fees. However, I assume that the Honourable MP is referring to the throughput fee. The throughput fee exists because the harbour receives a fee per litre of fuel that is imported. That fee is incorporated by SOL into the cost of fuel purchased by GEBE as seen in Table 1. That was the slide 3. Question 2, mention was made of removing the concession fee from GEBE to bring relief. Is this an option that government is going to look into? Will that be reflected in Budget Amendment 2024 or Budget 2025 moving forward? The answer is the COM nor the shareholder has had any discussion regarding removing of the concession fee. Question 3, need to have a discussion on some type of relief, especially for persons who have been affected by equipment going bad and don't have the receipts from years ago. Is there any discussion about giving persons relief for the period of load shedding? GEBE has assured that they have an established process for customers to submit claims for damaged equipment resulting from load shedding. Customers whose equipment has been damaged due to load shedding are encouraged to visit a GEBE office to submit a claim. This is the initial step in the process to seek compensation for any damage incurred. Once a claim is submitted, GEBE follows its internal procedures, which includes sending a technician to the client's location. The technician assesses the situation to verify the cause and extent of the damage, ensuring it is indeed related to the load shedding event. Before any consumption is paid out, GEBE must complete its due diligence. This involves truly reviewing the claim, confirming the validity of the damage, and ensuring all necessary steps were taken to responsibly handle the claim and situation. The company aims to ensure that any payments are made fairly and in accordance with established policies. By following the above process, GEBE ensures that claims are handled responsibly and compensation is provided only when it's justified and appropriately verified. As mentioned previously, the shareholder will also be looking into possibility of relief, but it cannot be to the detriment of GEBE. MP De Wever, whether or not the containers that we have already ordered, if the recent installed container generators are indeed new, why are we not purchasing them instead of leasing them? I would like to thank the MP for this suggestion, and I can confirm that the shareholder has already instructed GEBE to look into the possibility of renegotiating the current lease contract to a lease-to-own contract. So we are busy with that, what the MP is recommending. MP Duran, there could be a need for a national supervisory committee for GEBE with one representative from each elected party, one person from the SER and one from the General Audit Chamber and one from GEBE. The proposal is on the way to the Prime Minister. I can assure the Member of Parliament that all proposals provided to address this energy crisis on the short term will be considered with the relevant stakeholders as we continue to address the energy crisis of this country. Second question of MP Doran. Blockage of generators being purchased from 2020 and 2021, sorry. Why weren't these generators purchased and what was the real hold-up in that time? And are there still plans to purchase? Are they on their way? Are they in production at this particular moment? What is exactly going on with what was initiated in 2020 and 2021? I assume that the Member of Parliament, in his previous capacity of Member of Council of Minister during the time mentioned, should have some, if not all, information on what happened, and this is confirmed by the information I received from GEBE. A lot of information was shared, which we still need to process, and if needed, I can provide Parliament with a more extensive answer in writing. For now, I can share the following. It appears that there was a discussion on a loan from the Windward Island Bank, which they wanted to match with a loan from Pacific Life. Unfortunately, the conditions of the Pacific Life apparently did not match. Therefore, the loan of Windward Island Bank did not go through. Furthermore, although the loan of Pacific Life was approved in principle, the manager at that time was instructed by the Supervisory Board of Directors to still negotiate the conditions. The negotiations were not successful. In early 2021, the Supervisory Board of Directors decided it would focus on finalizing the 2029 financial statements and approve a strategic plan for a better approach on the required financing with preferable the APS and Windward Island Bank. This approach, as well as other ongoing concerns, were discussed in an informal meeting with the Minister of Romy in that time. We must realize that during that time, with the former management board term expiring and at the end of October 2020, several appointments of temporary managers, as well as an entire new supervisory board of directors, took place in 2020 and also in 2021. It could be stated that there was a lack of continuity in follow-up and execution in the recommended way forward from early 2021 due to the changes in management and supervisory board. There are still plans to purchase, of course, 3 generators as mentioned in the presentation given on June 25, 2024, and as stated in this session already, the government is negotiating the possibilities how to finance the purchase of these 3 quite expensive generators. MP Irion, solar consumers are already buying. Aruba has a department focusing on solar policy and that consumers can potentially give back with solar to the grid. It would be on the best interest to look into the solar policy and have persons trained in this field. Is that something that is going to be looked into for St. Martin? Currently, GEBE is in collaboration with the Ministry of TIAT, is actively reviewing and developing a net metering policy. This policy is still work in progress and aims to establish guidelines that will facilitate the integration of renewable energy sources into the grid, particularly for customers who generate their own electricity through methods such as solar panels. As part of the transition to renewable energy, GEBE recognized that it is essential to invest in training and development of its staff. MP La Cruz, on Tuesday, June the 17th, in the Daily Herald, there were 3 options mentioned for the barge. The first one was 20 megawatt electricity for 3.9 million per month. The other one was 32 megawatt for 5.4 million per month. And the third one was 8.2 million per month for 50 megawatt. These would have been functional within 6 weeks. Why was the more expensive short-term solution sought when there was a quicker solution for less money? Comparison for 20 megawatt usage, barge would cost 3.9 per month, fuel version generator container, which would take 3 months, cost 2.1 million more monthly, excluding diesel at additional costs. Where is that going? In discussion with GEBE, it was determined that the current containerized solution is more effective compared to the potential barge solution that MP La Cruz was talking about. The cost estimates previously discussed for the barge solution are not in line with the current expenses associated with the chosen containerized option. The containerized solution, which involves using prefabricated transportable unit, is the more economical choice, aligning better with the budgetary constraints and providing a more financially viable alternative to the barge solution. The decision to opt for the containerized solution reflects a careful consideration of cost effectiveness and operational efficiency. Question 2. Would like to know the stand of the government on the option to open up the bid that other companies can be providers to the country. The answer for this is, at the moment, we are focusing on the current energy crisis and working on the sustainability of the GEBE for the energy production for the country. Question number 3, has GEBE any plans to find a way to eradicate the fuel clause in its totality? As mentioned, based on the elements that make up the fuel clause, GEBE and the shareholders are reviewing ways in which this cost can be mitigated for customers. MP Roosburg, there was a proposal submitted referring compensation and relief to the public seeing the electricity laws. Can the Prime Minister look into the proposal and the pointers from the colleagues in Parliament? If the Honourable Member of Parliament is referring to her letter dated June the 27th, I can confirm to the MP that we are looking into these suggestions. Question of MP Otley. Mention is made that the management board and directors are being instated. What is the timeline? Who was selected? What will the case be with the special representative that we have? Are we planning to pay both persons? Once the MB is installed, the management team is installed, what is exactly the case? The shareholder, in accordance with the Articles of Incorporation, is currently finalizing the recruitment process for these positions, which includes the advice from the Corporate Governance Council. No timeline can be given, and certainly no names can be disclosed at this particular moment. Please note that once the complete management board is appointed, there will be no special representative nor a temporary manager. Question 2. What is the plans of a GEBE for the next coming years for their company to gain the trust of the people, to put themselves in a better financial situation? Is renewable energy on their radar, and how long will it take for this to be a reality? In order to gain the trust of the people, GEBE will continue to work towards the stabilization of the energy grid. As mentioned previously, the transition to renewable energy is a long-term goal and is being pursued strategically, but it will also take time to be fully implemented. Question 3 of MP Otley. What are the pros and cons of privatizing GEBE or allowing competition on St. Martin? As leaders of the country, we need to look at every aspect possible. We agree that all aspects need to be looked at. However, as mentioned in the answer provided to MP Lacruz, at the moment we are focusing on the current energy crisis and working on the sustainability of GEBE. MP Brug. Since the hack, a lot of consumers have been complaining that bills are still an issue. If the Prime Minister can find out what is being done about this, when will bills be finally regulated? A lot of persons are not paying bills because they cannot afford it, and they don't believe the amount charged is fair or correct. When is it going to be regulated, or is it already regulated? The answer is the following. Government understands the frustration that some consumers have faced since the hacking incident, which significantly impacted the billing system. It's important to note that GEBE has indicated that the billing system has now been for 99% restored, with billing accuracy currently at 95%. However, there are still a few customer accounts that are being finalized due to the complexity of manually restoring data lost as far back as February 2021. GEBE is currently making efforts to fully regulate and finalize all bills. These efforts are ongoing, and GEBE has stated that they are working diligently to ensure that the process is completed as quickly and accurately as possible. For customers who may be concerned about the accuracy of their bills or are experiencing financial difficulties, government encourages them to reach out to GEBE customer service, as GEBE has stated their continued commitment to addressing concerns on a case-by-case basis to ensure fairness and accuracy. While most of the billing system is now regulated, it is understood that some customers may still have concerns, and those are being addressed through this financial state of restoration. MP La Cruz, it is not possible for someone to go totally off the grid of GB by placing his home totally on solar. Is that true or not, and why is that the case if it's true? The answer is this is regulated in the National Ordinance on Electricity Concession, and that is actually in Afkondigingsblad 2013, geconsolideerde tekst nummer 147, Verordening Elektriciteitsconcessies. First, based on Article 2 under paragraph 2, sub A, a client can only produce electricity for own usage during a period the concession holder cannot provide electricity to the client. Furthermore, based on sub B of the same article, a client is allowed to produce electricity for own usage to a maximum of 500 kilovolt ampere. GB has not been financially audited for a couple of years. That is the second question of MP La Cruz. I will be putting a motion together to request a financial audit from 2016 to 2024. The MP is entitled, of course, to put forward this motion. However, as mentioned during previous meetings, GB has recently finalized its 2022 financial audit and anticipated that the 2023 financial audit will be completed by the end of 2024. Once these audits are completed, GB will fully comply with corporate governance standards. MP Marlin, when did the fuel clause start? Why did it start? And how long do we intend to continue with the fuel clause? The fuel clause actually has always been part of GB's billing structure. However, prior to 2010, GB had a single rate for billing purposes. In response to public requests in 2010, GEBE revised its billing format to provide more transparency. The bill was then separated, as mentioned, into the following components. 1. Stamp duty, a fixed charge of 25 antillion guilder cents. 2. A fixed rate for the first 100 kilowatt hour of electricity consumption, a rate of 29 guilder cents per kilowatt hour. 3. A base rate for consumption above the 100 kilowatt per hour, a rate of 0.25 antillion guilder cent per kilowatt hour. 4. A fuel clause rate, a monthly variable charge that applies to the total monthly electricity consumption, reflecting the fluctuating cost of fuel. This restructuring aimed to provide clearer information on how charges are calculated, offering customers a better understanding of their bills and promoting transparency in GB's practices. MP Doran, relief. Is there any thought right now to alleviate the burden on the general population, and how government, in collaboration with GB and their supervisory board and management, plan to do so? What are some real viable options in terms of relief? What is government and GEBE doing to alleviate the people in a realistic and responsible manner to bring real relief? The government, the shareholders, and GEBE are in agreement that some sort of relief has to be provided to the general population. These parties are also of the opinion that, considering the situation of GEBE, any kind of relief cannot be at the end to the detriment of GEBE. Therefore, as mentioned by the MP, we are looking at a realistic and responsible manner to bring relief to the people of St. Martin. Madam Chair, I hope that I have complied with my obligation to give answer to the questions posed by the members of Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your presentation as well as the answers provided to members of Parliament. And the document, so the presentation has been sent to Parliament, I'm understanding. And of course, members can take note of the presentation itself. I see already that we have several members of Parliament who wish to ask additional questions or for matters to be clarified as presented by the Prime Minister. And I start with giving the floor to MP De Wever. MP Ludmila De Wever, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Lady. Thank you for the floor. Thank you, Prime Minister, for the answers. I'm going to go straight into it. I'm just going to respond to certain comments that was made or in the answers that was received from the Prime Minister. One of them that I want to start off with for me, which is the most important, is the fact that in the conversation or in the presentation that we're getting, I am constantly hearing that GEBE has financial constraints and that I'm also hearing that GEBE is absorbing costs. Normally, in well-operating, a properly functional company, you usually don't have those two things together. You do not say the company is suffering from financial constraints and then also saying that we're going to absorb costs. Because the one thing that you have to do is when you have financial constraints, the one thing that you do is you start cutting costs. You don't absorb costs. So I really need to emphasize this point because this is the part that it's okay to come here and give an answer that will appease the public, but you also have to be realistic in it. Because at the same time that I'm concerned about that statement being made, I also refer to the Herald from yesterday, which is talking about Telem Group focuses on financial recovery and growth to restore trust. GEBE has not yet been able to restore trust. This is not about the Prime Minister, Madam Chair Lady. This is about GEBE restoring trust with the public, which is why it is having financial constraints. Because persons are not paying, not only because they can't afford to pay, and they have let the time go over more than 1 month that they're actually not paying. The longer you take to pay a bill, the likelihood of you being able to pay that bill is very slim because it becomes too big for you to manage that bill. It is the law of life when it comes to finances, and this is the reality that we have to deal with. One thing that GEBE has always had to deal with is the fact that when you have, after a hurricane, the same thing happens. The clients don't pay GEBE because everybody is trying to repair and clean up after a hurricane, but that is usually for a period of three months or so. And then after they come back on board because GEBE starts to cut. What GEBE has been doing is starting to cut, but they're at a financial constraint. So my concern is, how long is that sustainable for? Because it is not sustainable. And I refer to the Telem article in the paper because what happened here is that when we didn't catch the problems of the financial constraints early, you had over 80 persons that went home from Telem. And my concern will go back again to the employees of GEBE, because not only are they overworked, but they're overworked. I don't know if they're going to be underpaid because we have financial constraints. So you cannot have a contradiction, ma'am. You cannot have a contradiction in a statement coming out here, because beyond that statement, we have to deal with the reality of how sustainable is it then to keep on our staff at the same time. That is all I want to answer on, because I just need the truth coming in here to us today to know that we don't have to then provide for those employees that will be laid off the same way how it happened with Telem. And when Telem is talking about the fact that people are giving off false stories, the true story is Telem found itself in a kerfuffle because of bad management decisions, and I am warning once again, like I did over 2 years ago, about the national security crisis we are in. Because what was not nice this week is when I had to go in for an interview, I was reminded of a small hotel in town that every time their customers are coming in, they're turning away every time they see that the power is off, because this small guest house doesn't have a generator. So you're putting a constraint on the business owners to be able to stay open when they're losing business because they have no power. I just want a straight answer on this. This is all I'm looking for, because last time I was hopeful when we also found out the same day that the generators were released or shipped that day that we were in here when we started this meeting. So now I don't know if I missed it, and I apologize, Mr. Prime Minister. I really want to know if those generators are near to be arriving to the island, because I have to say, I'm now very concerned because we found ourselves this morning again with I believe it was an island-wide power outage. You know, I'm expecting that management is going to be hired after the recruitment process. There's a lot of things that are compounding on top of this, and I just need some assurance to give to the public that the Prime Minister is also trying to do, but we have to be realistic. And saying that you're going to absorb the cost, I don't know how that's going to happen when this is how it happens. Sol sends in, I believe it's daily, they send in their prices. It's updated in the system via the invoice that comes in, goes on to a different department to make sure that it's passed through the invoices. So then that means that we're going to have to pull out, physically, manually pull out the invoices that come to the finance manager of GEBE and make sure that the new bills aren't going to be incorporated in the price buildup of how they normally work at GEBE. I mean, I can spend one day and go through the detailed process of it, but I don't understand how we are going to be absorbing costs when the process of the bills coming into the finance manager and then going on to the requisite, the proper department. There's a process there. So when we disrupt that process of taking out diesel prices, it doesn't seem workable to me in my math brain. So I really would like to understand how that is going to function. We can do it off books, because I know the details of GEBE in and out because of being a former employee of GEBE, and maybe for public consumption it might be so complicated just like the formula, but I really would like to get an understanding of how that is going to physically be done to absorb the cost within the way that the system is working. And then just as a recommendation, while Telem is busy after laying off a bunch of staff, trying to rebuild trust after making a bunch of employees redundant, you know, I need to understand and make sure that all of us, because we're all clients of GEBE, that we get comfort from GEBE that their billing system is accurate. It needs to be accurate. And if it's not accurate, trust me, what happens and what works very well is when you use estimates for bills, especially when the estimate is based on actual consumption of employees. Because until you fix that first problem that we had in GEBE, which was mistrust in the system of billing because of a cyber attack, we will continue to have financial, quote unquote, constraints. So on top of that, I also wanted to confirm what the Prime Minister said is correct. There is no contract with Sol, but I don't think it's normal either that we go on not having a contract with our sole supplier. And I will go back in, and I appreciate, Mr. Prime Minister, I do appreciate the fact that you provided the components breakdown of how Sol charges GEBE. But what I would like to recommend to everyone is bring Sol in the room, bring 7 Seas in the room, bring the Minister of VSI in the room, and then have the Prime Minister there as well, so that everyone can discuss how to move our country forward in a collective effort. Because we're all in this now together, because we're all suffering, because not even the airport, that flight coming in from Santo Domingo today, couldn't land. It couldn't land because the airport wasn't working. So does everyone realize the national crisis that we're having now? Because we need people to come in. We're stating the obvious. This is all of us now has to handle this problem. Every single one of us need to have all hands on deck to manage this problem. So the information, the components that we have, I want to reiterate again. I appreciate the clarification for us as well as the public. The components that the Prime Minister mentioned are built into the price that Sol charges us, is including the throughput fee. And yes, indeed, it is about $5 to $6 million that Sol has to pay to the harbor. But I want to reiterate and clarify this. The barge with the fuel doesn't come to the harbor. It comes straight into GEBE through their pipeline going into GEBE. So until someone can explain to me how the harbor is receiving $5 to $6 million a month for money, for fuel being delivered directly to the port, to the GEBE plant, I want to understand that, because that is where you need to go to get relief. And if you can't get relief from that, bring in harbor in that conversation that I said that has to be had with the Minister of VSA, with the Prime Minister, with Seven Seas, with GEBE, and with Seoul. All hands are on deck. So the harbor also has to be very, very, very clear and very forthcoming with the information of whether or not they can handle what we need to have happen in our country right now to save us. Lastly, let me see. I think I've covered most of it, because I apologize if the Prime Minister mentioned the delivery of the day that we had this meeting, when we started this meeting. Again, I just want to emphasize, if that wasn't clear, I would like to know whether or not that shipment that went out the first day that we started talking about this, that we had our first meeting, whether that shipment, where in the world is that shipment now? Because then at least we know that it's coming to the island. Thank you very much, Madam Chair Lady.
MP De Wever, thank you for your contribution to this discussion and your questions posed. I continue and I offer the floor to MP Doran. MP Doran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Good afternoon to you, my honorable colleagues, the Prime Minister and support staff, and a special good afternoon to the people of St. Martin. I would like to start by first congratulating my colleague, MP Roseberg, on her birthday, and also my colleague, MP Akim Arundel. Madam Chair, one good thing about the truth is that you don't have to remember what you said or what was done. And I appreciate a lot of truth coming out of some of the responses here today. I have here in front of me a newspaper from the 28th of March, 2018. So this is exactly, I would say, 4 days prior to me even taking office as a public servant. The reason why I bring this up, Madam Chair, is in the headline on one of the front pages has new engines for GEBE still in the pipeline. And when you go into the article, based on the words of the CEO and the COO, the management team, we have some engines that are from Noah's time, Chittick said, alluding to how aged some of the engines are. Then when you go into the details, he said that new engines engine 21 will be probably acquired in 2019 or 20. A new engine is estimated to cost about 30 million guilders. The company also plans to purchase the use of liquid natural gas engines, which is more economical, environmentally friendly. GEBE acquired the last engine generator 20 in 2016, which will be put into operation in 2016 December and has the output of 11.3 megawatts and is capable of running on LNG. Madam Chair, through you to the Prime Minister, the reason I bring these things up is because a lot of discussion was put towards, the last Minister of Vrummy blocking engine purchases and all these type of things. But I became the Minister of Vrummy in 2020. So there's a whole 2 years later. So I'm saying all this to say, Madam Chair, I would like to sincerely thank the Prime Minister for finally coming out with the truth regarding who blocked the generators being purchased. Why? Because it's clear based on the response that the supervisory board played a role in that and not the Council of Ministers, because right now the Prime Minister as shareholder representative cannot block any purchase of GEBE generators because he advised and strongly suggests based on the shareholder and also based on corporate governance rules. Madam Chair, I would also like to go on to the point that right now, it was also stated based on the response that because of lack of continuity by the then incoming management board, the plans of the former management board, which consisted of the last official 3 O's, which consisted of the current Minister of VSR, because they weren't able to execute because they had to leave. But you've been in office for 5 months now, through you, Madam Chair, and I think that 5 months is enough time that if you had a plan that was rock solid, to just pick up and move forward. I'm saying all that to say that just based on what my colleague mentioned before me, it's all of our issues right now. And if you look at my presentation, the information that we've been bringing across over the last couple of months, it's a sense of inclusion and a sense of a unified front is needed in order for us to reach to a solution. Hence the reason for my suggestion based on a sort of an oversight committee. If it can work, let's make it work. If it needs to be tweaked, nothing is rock solid. But Madam Chair, I want to emphasize that a lot of the players that were in the room that caused a lot of the lack of decision making, I'll leave it at that for now, are still here at the table and pretending that persons don't remember. That's neither here nor there, but I really sincerely want for us to take this matter as serious as possible, finalize the appointments of the Permanent Management Board, which is in dire need, GEBE is in dire need of permanent management so that they can move forward, and let us put all hands on deck. I still didn't receive any sort of answer because I heard questions in that meeting being posed about throughput fees, and the term throughput is already saying through the port. So I would like throughput, throughput, sorry. Thank you for the correction. Can clarity be given as to why this was established and by whom? And so that I would like to know if that can be given, because I know that we had multiple meetings based on the harbor. We had one on the airport and the port. I know this question keeps coming up, but just like the fuel cost, it's a mystery. I saw some calculations, but it still doesn't give full comfort for me at least, or for the general public or people that I've spoken to, as to how these costs are added up and accumulated. I look forward to the clarification on those points, and I would like to thank you for the opportunity. Once again, thank you, Prime Minister, for the response.
Thank you, MP Doran, and I continue and I give the floor to MP Gums. MP Gums, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, and good afternoon to you, the Fifir, my colleagues, the Prime Minister and his support staff joining us, and to the public as well. Happy birthday to MP Roseberg and MP Arundel. Madam Chair Lady, I have to say I'm not, through you to the Prime Minister, I'm not very satisfied with that answer. MP De Weaver kind of read my mind. I guess thinking the same thing I thought, which is, how are you in a financial deficit and in financial issues and absorbing costs of something that the costs have not yet stopped? Because it's not just about the fuel, there's other costs involved with these container generator solutions. There's the ones that are coming in. I assume land has to be found to place them. The bases have to be constructed. All of that had to be done for these container generators also. So I think my question would be, what's the current financial position of GEBE and the current debt position? And if that has to be provided to us in writing under confidentiality rules, that's perfectly fine. Because I'll tell you why, to go further than what MP Weaver even mentioned, we had the former CEO of Telem in here in 2022 confidently telling us that their financial position was favorable, that it was strong, that fiber to the home sales were up, their EBITDA was no cause for concern. All of that was told to us. And then a year later, we had to read about the emergency restructuring that was done, that included layoffs and redundancies. We talk about the truth, but you can't get that if people are, at the end of the day, more concerned with position or pocketbook than they are with the kind of blunt honesty that we do need to move things forward. The Prime Minister also mentioned, and you can correct me if I'm wrong through you, Madam Chair, that there's been no real type of audits performed at GEBE. So how do you even know the reality of your financial position? Math was not my strong point, but I did work in the finance industry. So I know that these are bits of information that you need to have to actually be able to make sound business decisions. So I would really like to know, and again, if it has to be provided under confidentiality rules, that would be fine, but the current financial position and the debt position of GEBE. Because I find it very hard to believe. And I think, many of us in here maybe have gone to business school, but in my courses, they said that you cannot be in a deficit and absorbing costs, especially the type of costs associated with not one, but actually two phases of a solution to this problem. So thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll await the answers from the Prime Minister.
Thank you, MP Melissa Gums, for that contribution. And we continue, and MP Otley. I now give you the floor. MP Otley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good day to the Honorable Prime Minister, his colleagues, my honorable colleagues, the viewing and listening public. And I would like to join the sentiment of my other colleagues and wish MP Roseberg and MP Arundel a happy, happy birthday. I would like to make it known, as you said, Madam Chair, this meeting was requested in March. It was initially requested due to the fact that we were not able to speak in a previous meeting. However, since March, we are now facing many different obstacles, many different issues. I will be the first to say, and I'll say it here, that this saga is not over, it's far from over, and a public meeting should and will be requested, as we definitely need motions to be carried out, because my fellow MPs are saying it, the truth, the truth. Some things are not adding up. Business 101. I will repeat it again. If you are in a financial constraint, it's no way you can absorb the cost. That's what they're saying. Everyone here agrees with this. It's logic. But what we are doing, we are trying to appease the public through you, Madam Chair, and not saying where the cost would really go. As my good fellow MP always screams out in front of me, election is over. So let us tell the people the truth. We shed a shining light. We think that the problem is solved. And today what we have. And we see the problem growing because it's moving from businesses to schools, to police stations, to airports, affecting our tourism product, affecting layovers. And some people, many people, hundreds, were probably misconnecting flights. It is now a national crisis. Indeed, agreed. As stated in Article 2022 by my fellow MP, De Weaver, GEBE on the verge of creating a national crisis. Well, it's here. It's here. Give us the straight answers. Give us the straight facts. You are now in charge. Give us your plan, your vision. I asked the question specifically, what is GEBE's vision and what is the government's vision within the next 4 years? Given the benefit of the doubt, I said within the next 4 years. I have not received the government's vision up to now. That is what I need to hear. When it speaks of 7 Cs, when I was the Minister of VSR, we made big strides in giving GEBE the most profitable negotiation with 7 Cs, saving upwards of $400,000 a year. The discussion was had once GEBE is able to see the benefits of this savings. Let us bring relief to the people. What is the timeline that we can start to give relief to the people based on the newly negotiated agreement with 7 Cs, saving GEBE upwards of $400,000 a year? What is the update with GEBE and the friend side based on the connections that needed to be done, that could be done, so GEBE can bring in extra revenues for their coffers? What is the update with this? Madam Chair, I think the people of St. Martin want basic, raw, layman's terms, facts. I have here a bill sent to me, just sent to me by a senior couple. The utility bill is $273.25. The fuel clause of this bill is $468 more than the bill itself, its consumption. The fuel clause is a problem, it's an issue, it's plaguing the country at this point. There are inaccurate bills that we are receiving. We are still recovering from the hack. We see engines, 16 and the other one where they have crankshaft issues. I remember the very first meeting I asked in clarification when a timeline was given through you, Madam Chair, of the crankshaft being repaired. That was spoken as if it will be 100% possibility that this crankshaft will be repaired. Today we see we still have these issues. Again, as they say, our job, my job as a parliamentarian, is to question what I need to know, question what don't seem right. My advice to the Honorable Prime Minister, my advice from GEBE, I know when you sit there as a minister, through you, Madam Chair, the government-owned companies always presents the best possible fluff or best possible answer. It is your prerogative if you decide you are going to read those answers, knowing in your heart those answers are not correct or cannot be feasible to the country. Because when it comes out the mouth of the Prime Minister, it becomes the responsibility of the person that is speaking it. I have seen it over and under, even before the time of Mr. Washington, where GEBE, other government-owned companies would present ministers, including myself, with answers that you know in your heart is not correct. But I would dare not relay this to the public. So far, we have had 1, 2, 3, and I am the 4th MP asking for a realistic answer on how GEBE will handle this cost. The fact of saying GEBE will absorb this cost is a nice way of saying it will not be transferred to the people. If that is the case, I want the public of St. Martin to pay attention, note this date down, mark it down, star it, because the day that this is transferred to the people, according to the good old saying, it'll be hell to tell the priest. It'll be hell to tell the priest. So, I say to you, Honorable Prime Minister, review some of those answers in the clarification. Do not allow fluff through you, Madam Chair. Do not allow fluff and try to appease the public. Let us know the truth, because waking up in the middle of the night again with no electricity, for it to come back on, come off, come back on again, and come off again, is definitely a crisis. Do not let the public think that everything is good, the generators are here, the crisis is over, and the crisis seems to be worse. We're not expecting perfection through you, Madam Chair. We just want a realistic approach, a realistic timeline. That is all I'm asking for at this moment, Madam Chair. I reserve any questions for later down.
Thank you, MP Otley. The next MP to speak is MP Kotai. MP Kotai, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to our Honorable Prime Minister and his staff, and to my colleagues, those in the Tribune, those watching via social media. Just to backtrack on the billing issues question that I had, so the response that the Prime Minister gave through you, Madam Chair, was that any individual with billing issues should go to GEBE's customer service to solve whatever issue they currently have with the lack of transparency on how much they're paying. But from many constituents within our island, those who have the complaints about the billing issues have gone to GEBE and have also showed their bills with the number calibrated on the meters, and have said, maybe if I can be corrected over here through you, Madam Chair, are the meters calibration refreshed every time we lose electricity and get back electricity? This being said, then is the reading then not accurate at the end of the month based on how much actually has been consumed? Because again, to me, that does not make sense, that a half of the month there's no electricity, and then the bills are almost doubled. So just to come back to it, how can our constituents and population of St. Martin come very much more clear with the customer service department of GEBE to get valid answers on how to solve this issue? Because I'm being told that there is no clarity on that. And furthermore, another issue that I've been told, many businesses who are paying over $30,000-$40,000 a month in bills, they can't pay that in cash. They're going to pay it via a bank transfer. But even those amounts are not reflecting properly on their accounts. So the checks and balances are off. So if I could know that as well through you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Kotai. The next MP to speak is MP Jacobs. MP Jacobs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the griffier, my colleagues here in Parliament. I'll add my congratulations to the birthday celebrants today in Parliament, MP Akeem Arundel and MP Shamira Roseberg. Wishing you many more blessed years of life. There are several other September bonds I was made to understand, so all who celebrated and will celebrate this month. Madam Chair, also good morning to the Honorable Prime Minister, support staff, and representative of NVGB, those in the Tribune, and good afternoon, people of St. Martin, and all those tuned in. Madam Chair, I want to thank the Prime Minister through you for the presentation of the answers provided. I did see a greater attempt to explain to the people of St. Martin, because when we sit here in the House of Parliament asking questions, it is on behalf and for the people of St. Martin. Some of the mistakes I know for sure I made was in communicating in a way that I thought was clear. And so that's why when I would ask for clarifications, it is for that reason. Because when we speak, based on info you have a lot more information, and you've already digested that. But now when you're sharing it with people who don't have the ins and outs, who haven't worked at GEBE, and who haven't had whatever experience, it is not as easy to comprehend. And so even though the Prime Minister did go into a lengthy discussion, he brought back up the slides with the formula for the whole fuel clause, etc. Trust me, I don't think the people of St. Martin feel any clearer on the subject, in the sense of, why am I paying all of this? Madam Chair, I specifically asked a question, and it appeared that the Prime Minister didn't understand, and I don't have the question in front of me, but I know what I meant to ask, and it regarded fuel consumption during a time, and I think I heard my previous colleague talk about it, colleagues, that load shedding is taking place. So automatically, as the Prime Minister mentioned, you would expect that there is less consumption. But I did a comparison of my own bill after someone showed their bill to me, in that December, January, expect to have more consumption. It's Christmas, I have more people in the house, you have Christmas lights up, etc. The consumption then, compared to the consumption during some of the last bills in June, July, whatever the last bills we are paying are, the consumption is almost comparable to Christmas time. That is what I'm talking about. How is it possible during a period of load shedding that your consumption noted on your bill is as high as the time when it's Christmas? I even was like, okay, maybe because the air could stay on, and then when it came back on, but nobody's in the house still, so nothing else is being used. So, Mr. Honorable Prime Minister, through you, Madam Chair, and to GEBE, communication to the public needs to be very, very clear. Again, one of the MPs mentioned it before, in terms of, are the consumption readings correct? How is it possible that during load shedding that your consumption is higher than on a normal day? That is the challenge, and that is what the people of St. Martin want to know. And then we know that energy is expensive all over the world. That's a reality. The question I asked was, how is government planning to alleviate the stress to the people of St. Martin? When we were there, we had a discussion about the same throughput fee. the question came up several times, and I think we're dancing around the answer. Stop dancing around the answer. The throughput fee was a creative financing that was done to expand the port and build the bridge in Simpson Bay. That was a creative financing. So when it was brought to the attention of the Council of Ministers several months ago that this was a heavy impact on the throughput fee, on the fuel clause, we had the meeting with the port. And the port was, we're tied to the repayment of the loan, and that's why the throughput fee is there. And that's why, despite the fact that they don't load at the port, it was built in to the fees. And I loved, especially during the rhetoric of the whole campaign for the past year, that every question was yes, but how long are we binding the people of St. Martin to this? How long have the people of St. Martin been bound to this throughput fee, and how much longer are we in holding, or what's that word that would people use? To be paying this throughput fee for infrastructure that actually need upgrading. And I think I also asked the question, did the port just continue to maybe I asked it to the port, but in any case, it has to go through the same shareholder representatives. Did the port just continue to maintain this manner of paying, which is falling on the backs of the people for whatever else they need to do? And then we're talking about corporate social responsibility as a government-owned company. So I agree with my colleagues previously who spoke about everybody being on the table, because those agreements definitely need to be reassessed. And if the port can make monies in other ways, and we had meetings last week on that, then we need to become more creative and remove that from the backs of the people of St. Martin. Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, through you, I also submitted a letter mid-August through Parliament to the Honorable Prime Minister with several questions. And so at a certain moment, listening to the answers that were being answered, I'm like, didn't I ask all these questions on the floor as well? So since I have not received a response 1 month later, and despite being in the meeting on the same topic, I would like these answers to be provided. If some of them were asked already, you can ignore them. But during the presentation just now, I know I asked about the permanent management as well. In my previous presentation, Madam Chair, I didn't hear that. So if it was said, like my colleague, I apologize. If I was trying to read presentation and answers and listening and I missed something, but can the Prime Minister please elucidate where are we in finalizing the appointment of the management? I'd also like to know whether the Corporate Governance Council gave its advice on the Supervisory Board proposed candidates, whether it was positive or not, and whether the advice could be provided to Parliament. I had asked a question, Madam Chair, about who's the we we're talking about, because it was unclear to me if corporate governance was being applied as usual. The Prime Minister mentioned yes, so I'm going to assume that that is the case. In the meantime, one of the 4 engines is now operational. Is that the understanding? So only 3 are down? Can that be confirmed? I believe the assistant was mentioning that 7 is now operational out of the 4 that were down. Number 7 is back up. And so my question at the time was, you know, what level of load shedding can we expect back then in August, in 6 weeks, in 2 months, in 3 months, etc., as we go into the high season as well. And I don't know if I heard that, but people were experiencing some relief from the load shedding recently, but again, ironically today, that was not the case. So I haven't heard an explanation from NVGBE or seen it pop up on social media as yet, but I want to continue to reiterate that communication is key. During a crisis, communication is key. We can't stand in here touting leadership and solving problems, and we're not communicating. And that has to come from NVGB, even more so than the Prime Minister, because that's why I asked who's the we. Because these are operational matters that the company needs to communicate about. So I understand that the business plan is ready. The strategic business plan is ready. I understand that the roadmap is seen as high level, but I think, again, the gist of the question was missed. Government now has several plans in front of it. Are these plans even compatible? Are they in keeping with the sustainable goals and the vision of government towards renewable energy? What is the timeline to have something publicly known? What is the timeline? When are we going to know? Where are we going from here? Another question I asked, and I didn't even write down what the question was, but the response was, we're looking into it, and I heard that answer also given to other members in their questions. This was about the discussions with all the stakeholders to renegotiate agreements, etc., that impact the fuel clause. And this ties into the question or the statements being made here that the cost of the solution being handled right now is not being passed on to the consumer, which is a concern if we are still not collecting the revenues due to GEBE. We still have payables on the books, etc. Is there any plan for government to subsidize GEBE in any way to be able to offer relief to the people? That's what I was asking. I'm just hearing we're looking into it. But in looking into it, seeing that B1 spoke about ensuring the vital processing are upheld, I'm sure everyone knows what I mean by that, right? This is within the reforms that we've agreed to. This is one contingency that was held over our heads. It was what played a serious role in the whole airport saga, and the involvement of the Dutch. And so I am very, very much concerned as this continues to play out. Is government prepared to subsidize the challenges that GEBE is facing, the challenge that GEBE is facing, to ensure that these vital processes like energy, which impacts everything, is affordable for the people of St. Martin? So I am not getting from the answer that I got, Madam Chair, anything of a timeline or what options the government is looking at. So if we're not so far yet, then fine, that needs to be mentioned. But I find it very concerning at this stage that we don't have a view yet on where can we pull from, how can we alleviate the challenges, not just on NVGB, but on the people of St. Martin, because everything that is being faced is being passed on. And I'm a little bit concerned that down the road we'll hear that, well, we cannot pass this on, what we were promising not to pass on, in this case, on the people of St. Martin. So I continue also to get calls from people who are experiencing challenges. I always tell them, go to the service department to get it resolved, but it still remains a challenge. And at the end of the day, the income of the persons are not going up. So we have to find a way to alleviate the stress on the people of St. Martin. And so I don't want to hear, unfortunately, looking into it. I would like something a little more tangible than that from the Honorable Prime Minister. Yeah, so these questions from a month ago. I'm still looking forward to receiving in writing, Madam Chair, but I've highlighted a few that definitely I didn't hear a response to during the presentation here today. And I thank you for the opportunity to be able to ask us clarifications as well as mention some of the questions that I am still awaiting answers to. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Jacobs, for your contribution to the discussion. And I now give the floor to MP Ludmila de Wever, who wants to add or ask something further. MP de Wever.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. I just want to reiterate here that when I talk on the floor, especially when I talk about something that I am quite passionate about, which is GEBE, that I am doing it from a perspective of trying to assist in how to handle the situation. So I do come off quite passionate, but this is all in assistance not only to the Prime Minister, who is here with his team today, but to the general public. And I want to commend the previous speaker for actually clarifying exactly what the throughput fee was invented or created for. And I love the term that she used, creative financing, because now what the former speaker, the previous speaker has just done is now increase the stakeholder who should be in the room. Because I referred to several ministers and companies, but now it also has to include the Minister of TEAT, who was traditionally responsible for the harbor and the port, because now we need to have the port in on this discussion with us again, because we need to be realistic now, not only in GB's financial constraints, we need to also be realistic in how that is going to affect another company that has been struggling with their reputation as well and trying to come out of the rut that was reputational damage to them that occurred years ago with bad decision making. So again, this has nothing to do with the individual here, with the Prime Minister presenting the information today. Let me make that very clear. But it has to do with the fact that we now have, the more I look at this, the bigger I see the problem is. So it's not only GB, but now I have to include the harbor, then I have to include 7 Seas. I have to bring in the ministers responsible for it to help us to negotiate better. And you see where we're going with this. This is the issue that I'm having, where I, along with everybody else in the room, everybody else on our island, need to get some sort of comfort from where our future is what is going to go on right now with GEBE. That is it, Madam Chair Lady. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP De Wever, for your additional concerns as expressed. I don't see any other member of Parliament at this time. I would like to add, however, just a few questions to those already posed by my colleagues here in Parliament. And if the Prime Minister can explain a little further the proposal/request that has been made to the Netherlands for financing. Is there a formal request of this nature regarding GEBE? What has been the discussions regarding if there has been a request, formal or informal, just to provide some further insight given all of the discussions pertaining to loans and repayments, etc., that the country has been having with the Netherlands. So if this particular request/approach to the Netherlands, if that can be further elucidated upon. Several of my colleagues have mentioned, and there is even a proposal that has been sent to the Prime Minister regarding getting together with the relevant stakeholders in the situation of GEBE. And there has also been some discussion in the past regarding a representative of the shareholder, that, and some disagree that that actually is the case, that the shareholder can appoint or designate a sort of a representative with certain responsibilities in the company of GEBE. Can the Prime Minister go a little into this particular matter, the shareholder having or not having the authority to designate someone as a shareholder representative within the structure, the corporate structure of GEBE? The to the Prime Minister as well, and I asked this in my previous questions regarding GEBE, the different plans that are on the table. What is currently, if any, outside of the so-called emergency measures that have been taken with respect to buying and renting generators, containerized and otherwise? What is the plan, if any, that GEBE is working according to right now? And where do the different studies that have been done regarding GEBE, its future and the future of alternative energy on St. Martin, where do those plans fit, if at all, in the plans that GEBE have? So outside of the emergency situation right now, with the generators and the three-prong approach that GEBE, with the approval of the shareholder, has engaged into, where does GEBE stand overall with a plan called a roadmap or otherwise? And again, can this plan, if such exists, can that be shared with the Parliament of St. Martin? So I just want to add those, and I look forward to receiving the answers to the other questions that have been posed by the members of Parliament in here. And I'm going to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes to caucus with the Prime Minister regarding the continuation of this meeting. So I'm going to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes. Meeting adjourned. Good afternoon, and I hereby reopen this meeting of Parliament, a Central Committee meeting of Parliament on the topic of GEBE and matters pertaining and surrounding GEBE and the supply of electricity here on St. Martin. And after a brief caucus with the Prime Minister, who has several answers to give to members of Parliament, as well as a reaction on comments made by members of Parliament. The Prime Minister has indicated his availability to return to Parliament in the week of October 7th. However, this is one of the weeks, the last week, I believe, that Parliament will be having orientation for the new to be installed Parliament. As is, of course, known, and this is more for the general public, this Friday you will have the installation of the new Parliament as per the election of August 19th, and thus immediately following that, as is customary, the Parliament will embark on an orientation program for all members of Parliament, and the new ones in particular, of course. So I am therefore going to suggest that, taking into account the suggestion by the Prime Minister and the orientation program of Parliament, that we reschedule this meeting as soon as possible. However, at this time, I do not foresee us doing that during the orientation sessions of Parliament. But a date will be confirmed with the Prime Minister to return to Parliament. So this meeting of Parliament is going to be adjourned until further notice. I look to the Prime Minister, and if there's any, at this stage, closing remarks that the Prime Minister would like to make. If not, then I can go immediately over to the adjournment of this meeting. I look at the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, any closing remarks for this part of the meeting?
It's not working. Yes. President of Parliament, once more, thank you very much, and members of Parliament, for the opportunity for me to be here to give answers to the question posed. I really appreciate the positioning of the members of Parliament, that we all realize that this national crisis is a problem that is concerning all of us, and I'm very happy to see the positive approach towards us approaching this inclusively together, because actually a national crisis is a problem that is going to be part of causing our livelihood to go backward. And that's why really I appreciate the approach of the members of Parliament for us to be together in thoughts and in suggestions and efforts to see how we're going to comprehensively solve the problem of this national crisis of energy. And for that, much appreciation. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And like you mentioned that, I would also want to suggest to you that if you have any ideas and or proposals going forward as to a way to get to the kind of collaboration that several members have mentioned and or alluded to, I would kindly ask you that you, even ahead of the continuation of this meeting, that you present that to the Parliament. That can be done in writing. And so I look forward to receiving any such ideas and or proposals. Thank you, Prime Minister, and your support staff. Thank you, members of Parliament. Thank you all to all who were tuned in to this meeting of Parliament. And I hereby adjourn this Central Committee meeting of Parliament. Meeting adjourned.